and they administer DMT, IV, and record all of these experiences, and they're replicating by way of the scientific method the same kind of spiritual, deeply profound spiritual meeting God, near-death-like experiences that people describe.
Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Love, Loss, and Hallucinations. Before we jump into things here, I want to read this little disclaimer because we probably will at some point be talking about plant medicine. This content is for educational and harm reduction purposes only. We do not promote or support illegal activity, the sale or use of restricted substances, or the use of associated tools or accessories for said substances. Always consult a qualified professional for your health decisions. And quickly, if you're a regular listener of this podcast, or if you've only checked out an episode or two, it would really mean the world to me if you could go to Apple Podcasts, go to the main page of Love, Loss, and Hallucinations, scroll down to the rate and review, click on that, and leave both a rating and review. It's really one of the best ways for this podcast to reach a wider audience, share the information and the discussions that we're having here, and help build this community. And with that little piece of housekeeping done, it is my pleasure today to welcome my guest, Dr. Dave Rabin. He is a neuroscientist, board-certified psychiatrist, health tech entrepreneur, and inventor who has been studying the impact of chronic stress on humans for over 20 years. He's a senior research scientist on faculty at the Florida State Institute for Human and Machine Cognition, the executive director of the Board of Medicine, and the co-founder and chief medical officer of Apollo Neuroscience. He has also just published a book titled A Simple Guide to Being Alive, which in the intro he writes is your long-lost user manual to being a human being. And I think pretty much everyone could use that right about now these days. So thanks. Welcome to the show, Dr. Dave.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Your book, I've been reviewing it, diving into it, is so many wonderful bits and pieces and parts and wisdom, definitely more than we're going to be able to cover here. But I'm wondering, just to start, just to give people an idea of who you are as a person, like, was there, as you're getting into this field you've been studying for the last 20 years, neuroscientist, psychiatrist, was there any defining incident in your life prior to that put you on that path?
Yeah, I think that there were many, right? Many, and I think some of the particularly relevant experiences, one of which I talk about in in the introduction to the book, was about growing up and having very intense, vivid dreams as a kid, and just really, at one point noticing that they were very vivid and often neutral or positive when I was really, really young. And then I started going to school and having more scary dreams. And regardless, I would have these situations where I would wake up and not know if, or at some point in my day afterwards, I would not realize that what had happened in the dream was actually a dream and not real until it had been pointed out to me. So it was very, these experiences were very, very real and felt as real as waking life. And so I never really, as a kid, got an adequate explanation of what dreams are or what we're experiencing during those states. But I always found them really fascinating. And that kind of led me into studying meaning making, and led to an early fascination with neuroscience and science fiction, because when science doesn't answer the questions that you are trying to answer, you go and start reading about other ways of thinking about the world, and science fiction was one of those ways. As I went into more medical training over the years, I ended starting to study dreams through a neuroscience lens, through meaning, because what we experience in our dreams is changed by what experiences we have in the world. When you watch scary movies, for instance, right, you're going to have, oftentimes right before bed, you'll have more scary dreams. For me, it was like being picked on in school as a young kid dramatically shifted my dream content. And that was,
and were you picking up on that as a kid? That there was a correlation there?
No, I don't think I really realized it until afterwards, but I did notice that I started to have bad dreams, and I had never had those before, and that those were really scary and unpleasant. And I noticed that my dreams before that time were like really nice, and I wanted to go back to those, right?
Mm.
And so
Yeah.
I talk about in the book that like sleep was a really nice experience and then became kind of scary. And one of the pivotal moments for me in my life was when I went to a flea market with my dad as a kid, and I learned about dream catchers in school, and he bought
Oh,
me a
yeah.
dream catcher. And so I was like fascinated by this indigenous ancient technology from that I learned about from the, tribes people of like middle Western America, the Cherokee, I think, that made these devices that decrease negative or bad dream content in children, right? And kind of kept evil spirits away from children when they were dreaming. And I was like, wow, I just found one of those at a flea market and I learned about it in school. Like I should see if that works. And that was really like one of the first experiences of consciousness that I had as a kid that I thought was really, really pivotal for me to answer
Did it
your
work?
question, where it worked. Yeah, my dream content
Wow.
completely changed within as little as one night. My dream content completely changed.
Wow.
And that was really powerful for me to know that, there's like a relationship between biology and belief and some other things that are going on in the world in other cultures that we just don't really have an explanation of in Western culture yet. So the book was my way of explaining that to people, because I really believe that after my 12 years of post-college medical education, which makes me one of the most highly trained, educated humans on the face of the earth, that it is a lot of the solutions that we have for complex things we're struggling with, or things that seem complex, be them health problems, learning problems, mood problems, whatever, mental illness, addiction. A lot of this, the treatments and solutions are actually much more simple than we were taught they are, and that Western neuroscience is really helping to demonstrate that once and for all. And so the book is my way of translating that knowledge to the world.
Oh, wow. Well, I feel like I almost want to I'm going to have you back on. We can just spend an hour talking about dreams and the altered reality that is dreams, and, the importance and use and all that sort of thing. But we'll save that for another podcast. I'm actually really interested in that. But yeah, I do love the way in your book, it's this wonderful weaving of Western, Eastern, and an indigenous or tribal wisdom, like all coming together in this synthesized, easy to read, like, and humorous way. Like you definitely have a sense of humor in here, which I appreciate. So I guess you kind of already said what inspired the book, but was there a moment where you were just like, oh my God, this book is not out there and I need to write it?
Yeah, I think for me, it was probably about 10 years ago. I had just completed, I was treating patients with severe treatment-resistant post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, anxiety disorders on the daily, a lot of, and addiction, substance abuse, people who were very, very sick, who were not responding, generally speaking, to the Western treatments that we had been taught to use. And about 10 years ago in 2016, I received my MDMA assisted therapy training with MAPS, the organization, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, that was really pioneering all the training and research into how MDMA assisted therapy can be used to address the burden of trauma. Almost all of those studies turned out to be incredibly, overwhelmingly positive, which was fantastic, because it took 4 years
and just like 3 treatments as well.
Yeah, just 3 doses. It was paradigm shifting for the field, right? It's just 3 doses of MDMA for 8 hours each dose, with 2 therapists for 42 hours combined over 12 weeks. So 3 8-hour sessions is 24 hours, and then the rest of the 42 hours over the 12 weeks is spread out over the rest of the 12 weeks. And people are entering remission or responding to that treatment somewhere around 70 to 88% of the time. We actually see a treatment response, which is already dramatically different, leaps and bounds better than what we see with our standard of care treatments like Paxil and Zoloft and medications, SSRIs.
Yeah, that's something like 40% if you're lucky, right?
Yeah, it's probably 30 to 40% respond to treatment and within a 12-week time frame. And then we see that with SSRIs, and then we see that amount that actually enter remission, meaning they no longer have symptoms long term, is probably about 10 or 20% of people who ever get treated. Whereas with MDMA, with just 3 doses of medicine and therapy, it's the opposite. We see that response rates are 60 to 88%. And then the amount of people who are no longer who have successfully entered remission is 55% at the end of the 12 weeks. And that goes up to 67% at 1 year out. And there are some people who sustain remission, meaning they no longer meet diagnostic criteria for PTSD at 5 years out. There's still people well without additional treatment provided by the study. And we've never seen that before in the history of mental health, ever. And the entire treatment is based on, in terms of how MDMA works to make that possible, which we've wondered for a long time. We now know that it works by amplifying the safety neural networks that are involved in relearning safety in the emotional brain, which then connects to the amygdala, which stores both fear and safety learning. And it literally extinguishes learning, or the fear learning. So PTSD is a fear learning disorder, and so is depression, anxiety, and many other mental illnesses. And so we now know from 100 years of neuroscience research, starting with Pavlov's dogs and B.F. Skinner's rats and Eric Kandel's snails, Eric Kandel won Nobel Prize, that this is still not passed down or taught properly, but that this is how we learn. We can extinguish fear learning by relearning, with intense experiences of safety. And MDMA is actually working to neurochemically augment safety in the brain to make that possible. So I saw that and I was like, oh my God, this is brilliant that this works this well. And we know basically how it works. So why have we not taught this? And I was like, somebody has to write a book about this. And that was 10 years ago. And then 9 years went by and I continued to do my work and continued to do my research into how psychedelics work and the neuroscience of trauma healing, and kept taking notes for a book. But I was really secretly hoping that somebody else would write it, because I still admittedly had a lot of trauma, from my PhD thesis that was very much dreading. I was kind of dreading writing another 250 plus page document that was cited with over 400 or 500 citations. I mean, it's a tremendous amount of effort to write a book. And and so finally 9 years went by, and now we have like a 7-month-old, and we have a startup, and we have many other
all
things
the spare time in the world to crank out this book.
And I was like, nobody's written this book, but I feel like this book is calling to me, and the world is in need of it more than ever. And so I stayed up like 3 nights a week working my regular day job, and I stayed up 3 nights a week for like a year, and I churned it out. And we launched it on June 16th, which is really exciting.
Yeah. Well, and I can tell people this is not a dry PhD thesis. There, like I said earlier, there's humor in it. There's some great drawings, and just the way you have it. I mean, I'm just going to quickly lay out, like, it's basically broken into 2 parts. And the first part is, the first half of the book is the problem, which is fear, which you have subtitled Fear and Loathing in the 21st Century, which I think every one of us resonates with. You have chapters like The Age of Anxiety, The Digital Messiah Complex, Death of Intimacy, Immortality Hustle. And then the second part is the solution, or the way home, as you say. And that includes chapters like Ancient Wisdom, Making Meaning, There's Nothing to Fear, and a couple other chapters that I'll get a little more in depth to here. So yeah, I love the way it's laid out. And one thing you say right near the beginning, I can't remember which chapter, I think it might've been in the intro, is we must feel to heal, which, very simply said, obviously, a lot of people work towards that and sort of realize that on some level. But why is that? Why do we have to feel to heal? Because, our culture is not good at allowing us to have our feelings, especially men. Certain women too, I would say. But particularly in my experience, men. But yeah, why do we need to feel to heal?
I mean, we're all generally, men and women both, kind of emotionally repressed in certain ways. Like women are taught to, like both of us are taught to repress our sensitive side, right? And
I agree.
that masculine domineering traits are more favored by society. They're more focused on productivity. They're more focused on generativity. They're more focused on what makes money, right, and generates capital. What does not generate capital, as obviously, is the yin part of that yin yang, right? Which is like receiving and coolness and warmth and warmth of emotion and comfort and feeling. And the system has a yin and a yang, as we know from thousands of years of ancient Eastern medicine, as a metaphor of describing a balance between two parts of our energy in our bodies. And what feelings are is that energy in motion. So emotion, if we are humans made of energy, again, this is kind of what I talk about in the chapter on physics that I think is really also so poorly taught, but we are all energy and our energy, that emotion is energy in motion. It's emotion, right? So when you think about that energy in motion trying to deliver a feeling to us is not actually good or bad, despite what we may have been taught in terms of how to label that emotion or that feeling. It's not good or bad. It just is energy in motion.
Right.
It's trying to deliver a message, just like light delivers the message of vision and sound delivers the message of hearing your environment, and tasting food delivers the message of flavor, right? Emotion is trying to deliver a message from the inside to us that is trying to tell us something. Like, there's something that you lost. It's time to grieve. There's something that you just succeeded at. It's time to celebrate, right? There's something that needs your attention because there's too much uncertainty around right now, right? That's emotion coming up from the body to the brain. And it's saying, hey, buddy, pay attention to this from the inside. So does that make sense so far?
It does. Yes, definitely.
So yeah. Sorry, go ahead. And then I'll
go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, and then, by not allowing that emotion to come out, what comes to mind for me, and this is a very simplified version, is an animal that has had a scare from a predator or something. And, they'll, instead of like holding it in like, oh my God, that was so scary, but I can't tell anybody because that looks weak, they'll just shake it off, their whole body shake, and they release that emotion. Is that a similar situation that we don't allow ourselves?
Yeah. So basically, like, there's you remember the order of operations in math? Like,
I was not a good math person, so I do not, but go ahead.
well, so the gist of it is, in math, in physics, in all of chemistry and the way that our equations work, there's what's called an order of operations, which means there's certain things you do first. Then there's certain things you do after you've completed those first things, and so on and so forth. Right. And so there is an order of operations for human experience that we don't teach. The order of operations for human experience is that you can feel, you can think, and you can do, you can act. And those are three options that we have for anything we could do in any moment. We can feel, we can think, we can act. Okay. And those are connected because our actions and our thoughts impact our feelings, and our feelings and our, impact our actions, et cetera. They're all connected. I call this the human toolbox in the book. But this comes from cognitive behavioral theory. And the gist of it is that we're supposed to feel first. We are humans are sensory organ systems. Our entire body is designed to feel stuff. Only this part is designed to think about stuff. Right. The entire rest of the body,
for those of you who aren't watching.
Oh yeah,
this.
Sorry, thank you. Yeah, for those who are listening, I just pointing at my dome. So our dome is responsible for thinking, and that's the only part of our bodies that is designed and evolved to think. The entire rest of our bodies that we neglect most of the time is designed to feel, and feeling is the evolved priority. And when we think first, we are directly opposing the natural order of things, the natural order of operations, and we're sabotaging our own ability to cope with the environment by judging the feeling before we've even felt it, we prevent the feeling from expressing itself and conveying its message. So if I'm feeling sadness, which because I lost something, like I lost my favorite, I lost my favorite phone, my cell phone, right? It disappeared.
Yeah.
And I have everything on my phone. And I'm like, the feelings that are coming up are like sadness and concern that I need to like grieve the loss of this. It's going away. I'm not getting it back. And then by grieving it, I can get over the fact that I just, lost it. I can get over the embarrassment, the discomfort. I can forgive myself. I can accept that it's gone, and then I can finally move on and get a new one and move on with my life. Right. If I feel that sadness come up and I'm like, fuck you for being sad. You're not allowed to be sad, right? Sad is bad. Don't feel that. Then I can still go on and get a new phone and continue on with my life. But the feeling of that grief, that sadness and the loss that needed to be processed so that it can escape my body just lives there. Just constantly being like, hey, remember me? I'm still here forever.
Just stuck there.
Until you feel it. And so that's why the Buddhists have always said traditionally, like, resistance to what is, or attachment to the way you wish things were, which is a form of resistance, is the root of all human suffering. Mm-hmm. We spend our time attaching to a concept that this feeling defines me, makes me a bad person, that I feel sad or I feel afraid or I feel guilty or ashamed, rather than just accepting that it's a feeling trying to pass a message on and it doesn't mean anything about us. Then we don't feel it. We suppress it or repress it. And then it just lives in us forever, causing suffering constantly on a continuous, indefinite basis. All we need to do is feel first, which is what our bodies are designed to do. And remember, feel first, think second, act third, right? Right now we think and then we act. That's addiction also, is that, I have this unpleasant feeling. Let's numb or escape from it immediately, right? There's no feeling happening. So it's literally just, we've automated this rapid path from, oh, wow, that feeling's unpleasant. Rather than entertaining feeling that at all, I go straight to, that must mean I'm bad. I hate that feeling. I need to avoid this. I'm going to use X drug to numb or distract myself from that thought process that's disturbing me, or from that feeling that's disturbing me, which is pain. And when we do that, we create a cycle of suffering, because again, the thing that's causing the pain, the source of the pain, like what you call it, like look at it like a thorn, an emotional thorn, is not allowed to be pulled out. And so by feeling it, you pull the thorn out, and then the pain goes away in about 90 seconds. Whatever it might be, as bad as it might seem, it goes away in about 90 seconds. So you can move on to the next
just 90
thing.
seconds, right? Once you're allowed to feel it.
You.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Right. And we just teach this so badly. Right. So that's the
if it's taught at all, right, on any level. But I love the feel first, think, then act. And I believe you write this in the book. It's not I think therefore I am. It's I feel therefore I am.
It's I love therefore I am.
I love therefore I am. That's right. And we're definitely going to get to love. So we'll definitely jump down
ergo sum. Yeah. Yeah. But related to feeling, right? Because if you love yourself enough to feel safe in your body and to know that you're safe in your body, which you can remind yourself of by just reminding yourself at any moment that I am worthy of love just by nature of being alive, then you're safe enough to feel your feelings. It's when we're worried that, hey, maybe if I feel this way, if I feel this feeling, I'm no longer worthy of love, or I'll no longer be accepted by my community because that feeling was like shunned when I was a kid, or I was made to feel badly for expressing that emotion as a kid. That's what creates those thought loops that result in us continually avoiding feeling. So self-love in a lot of ways is, and the like this notion of I love, therefore I am, in a lot of ways is the antidote that we can practice and train like a muscle to remind us that we're safe enough to feel again.
Yeah, I love that because, and I love how, you are, as I said earlier, weaving in Western and Eastern and just general life. Hello, like this is a good way to approach this and change your ways because, even that like self-love and I'm worthy of love, like 30 years ago, 40 years ago, what is that new age hippie bullshit? What are you talking about? I'm not going to tell myself that. But, the science has since shown that if you take on these practices of gratitude and positive self-talk, like you can rewire the way you are and change the way you react to situations.
Yeah, exactly. You're just putting your attention and your human energy to work for you rather than against you. So if you if you think about it, like it's I don't know if you've ever read like Games People Play or Scripts People Live. They're two very famous books about this topic, but the idea that like we are all living out a story that we tell ourselves about who we are, what we think we're capable of, what we were taught we're capable of, what we were taught is good or bad, and how we were taught to see the world. And that story is literally like playing on a tape, like a narrative, over and over and over again on loop. And if you don't recognize that there's a story playing, there's a tape playing, then you can't update that tape because you don't realize that you have the ability to revise it on the go and rewrite that narrative as you update your evidence about who you know yourself to be. Like, for example, it's like, and it's kind of like a video game in life in that way, right? Which is that like you are Scott, and then Scott decides to go learn how to mountain bike, right? And then Scott at time point A doesn't know how to mountain bike, but then Scott invests 30 hours into going and biking up Mount Tam or Fairfax or wherever, right? And then Scott knows how,
Right.
And then Scott comes back 30 hours later knowing how to competently mountain bike without hurting himself. And you just upgraded your human abilities in a major way, right? You're still Scott, but you have decided to invest your time and your energy into something that makes you better, faster, stronger as a human being, rather than the opposite, which could be just sitting around thinking about what a piece of shit you are and how you're not good at anything and you're never going to be a good mountain biker, right?
Right.
But there's a choice, and there's a power in that choice. And I think that's what really people need to take away, is that we actually do have a say in the outcome, right?
I love that. We do have a say in the outcome. Everyone remember that. And I think what you also the example you said of mountain biking, brings to mind that it does take practice. It does take repetition. It takes a little work, but not that much, like just a couple minutes a day, really, even in the morning, just to kind of get the brain firing in that new way and kind of start to build those neural pathways, if I'm correct about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so much easier than most people think it is. Like, you don't even need to start with mountain biking. Like I just use that as a reference because, of the town that we both live in.
Because we're both in Marin, but yeah.
Right. But I think in general, right, like if you think about this from the standpoint of like, what could the average person do to change their lives in as little as one day? It would be like, it doesn't need to be, or little as 1 week. It doesn't need to be a grand gesture. We often think like it has to be this huge act, it has to be this huge thing that requires money, or that requires like a huge amount of time commitment every day, or a bunch of skill. And it doesn't need to be that at all. You can literally just say thank you to yourself in the morning and at night. And if you want to, for 7 days, just say thank you to yourself for anything, for being alive, for taking a breath, for anything. And if you can, in addition to that, just take even just 1 to 2 minutes. It doesn't have to be 5, 10, 30 minutes or an hour. 1 to 2 minutes of just breathing by choice in the morning and at night. Meaning you just chose to breathe. You don't need to count. You don't need to think about doing it right or wrong. You just need to breathe by choice because you chose to do it, and just feel and notice the air coming in, coming back to that feeling first, just noticing the air and noticing your interaction with the air. And do that for like 1 minute morning and 1 minute at night while thanking yourself. In 1 week, you will change your entire life, because that tiny little gesture repeated is rewiring your brain to associate your mornings and your nights with feeling calm and at ease. And that shifts everything about your perspective. The grand gestures can often make it harder because they're not as repeatable. And it's not about how big the gesture is. It's about how repeatable is the practice. And that process is how we learn. That's the learning happening. So if we can't repeat it, then it's probably going to wear out. And the more we can create these little micro moments of wellness, and repeat them and make them repeatable and fun over time, then the more sustainable all of this healing work gets, and the easier and more like automatic it gets. Goal is automation of the good stuff. That's real multitasking.
Yeah, I love that. And so anybody out there listening, if you take nothing else away from this episode, 120 seconds a day, a minute in the morning, a minute at night, intentional breathing, giving thanks for just being alive, do it for 7 days. And that simple practice can lead to huge change in your own life and the way you interact with this world. So thank you for that. I was going to ask that at the end, like, where should we start? And you've already hit it. So,
but I think the point is that people should tell us, right? Like, we want you to tell us, like, we're going to give you this like super easy practice to prove that you can prove to yourself within 120 seconds a day that you can change your life in as little as 1 week. Like, try it. Tell us how you feel. You have literally nothing to lose.
Yes, I would love anybody out there, try it, leave us comments, let us know how it goes after a week. Would love to have conversations around that. Well, and part of, you've talked about feeling and, I do want to touch on this pretty amazing piece of technology you've come up with, which is the Apollo, and which is a wearable technology. He has it on his chest. For those who can't see it, you can also wear it, I think, as a bracelet around your wrist or your foot, that sort of thing. And, just as I was reading up on it, it does this. It's this. I mean, it's better for you to describe it, of course, but as someone who also has a record label, like the music component of it and the inspiration from music really like hit me, as well as just how it simulates touch in a way. But please, I'd really like the listeners to learn more about it because it's pretty fascinating.
Oh, yeah. So Apollo Neuro is a technology that I developed and discovered out of my research at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, trying to treat PTSD and mental illness more effectively in our patients who were struggling and who were good candidates for MDMA and psychedelic therapy, but didn't have the money or the ability to access those treatments. And I learned very quickly that there are far more people, there are like tens of millions of people, if not close to 100 million people nationwide who would actually meet criteria for psychedelic assisted therapy, but there's no availability of those treatments except a small number of ketamine clinics to serve those people. And their treatment is going to take it's going to take us 10 to 20 years at the current rate to address the burden of all those folks. And so
that's because ketamine is legal, just for anyone out there.
Yeah, ketamine, right. Ketamine is the only legal psychedelic available to date.
Yeah.
But MDMA and psilocybin used properly work tremendously well, but they require, they're going to be probably for that 12-week, three-dose course we were talking about, it's probably going to be somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000.
Yeah,
and insurance doesn't cover it right away. And there's only like 1,000 of us, if that, trained to be able to deliver that care today. So 1,000 people times nearly 100 million people who are sick, and it takes 12 weeks for each person. Just do the math, right? It's going to take us years and years, decades to treat all of these folks. And so I thought, well, if we understand the neural mechanism of psychedelics, then perhaps we can use some of these natural sensory tools like music that we know makes people feel better, that we know is helping people with MDMA experiences, make them better. We know we use music for powerful experiences in psychedelic therapy, but we also use music to heal ourselves, and our patients use it on their own, on their day-to-days. And so thinking about that, I was like, well, if soothing, what are these natural things like soothing touch and hearing your favorite song on a bad day, getting a hug from a loved one or a pet on a bad day, you instantly feel better, right?
Right.
And it's like a universal human experience. Like, I don't know a single person who can't say they have had that experience. So I thought, well, what if we just map out the neural pathways of that experience and what it feels like to hear one of your favorite songs or get a hug from somebody you like on a bad day? What does that do to the nervous system? And to my surprise, I discovered that if you map that out, that it's activating the same parts of the nervous system as MDMA.
Wow.
Or MDMA is activating the same parts of the nervous system as hearing one of your favorite songs and getting a hug from a friend. And I thought, well, that's interesting. So what if we combine, right? What if we combine those two, the favorite song and the hug, and we compose music for like bass rhythm, like the kind of rhythm that you feel through your skin, like a lot of the stuff that you guys and in your bones, like what you hear coming out of a subwoofer at a show, right? Like what if we compose that for people that they could wear with the touch receptors in the skin that receive soothing touch, like a hug from a friend, be able to interpret that music as something that is calming and soothing and helps improve feelings of safety in the body and healing from mental illness. And so we spent many, many years working on this, and through double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled trials, now we have 17 completed clinical trials across over 2,000 people nationwide. We have shown that people reliably improve their sleep up to 46 minutes, on average 46 minutes a night using Apollo on their wrist or ankle. Apollo has now become the first technology in history, wearable technology, to improve heart rate variability and REM sleep, which is one of the heart rate variability's leading correlator of longevity and health span, and how likely we are to perform consistently under stress and resist illness and recover from illness. REM sleep is a major indicator for how functional we are the next day, how rested we feel. REM sleep, it turns out to be more important that we get more REM sleep as a total component of sleep than other forms of sleep, because it's so restorative for us, and you have to feel safe to get REM sleep. And then also Apollo has been shown to reduce burnout, improve quality of life, decrease fatigue during the day, and help people who are struggling with treatment-resistant mental illness symptoms who are not getting relief from other things like medication. Apollo is helping to do the trick, just like these natural techniques, just like meditation, mindfulness, breath work.
It's helping them feel calm and safe and that sort of thing.
But it doesn't require effort. And it's literally through wearable bass music. They just strap it on and it just
So it
sends
just feels like a little vibration then, sort of against your skin? Is that sort of the sense of it?
It feels like an ocean wave, or like a cat purring on your body, or like a dog like gently breathing on your body, or like a hug. It feels like a warm embrace. Like it feels like calm and comforting, and like somebody or like an animal giving you a hug. That's what it feels like. And we describe it, like people describe it as like their body's favorite song. Right? Like that's
a great tagline.
So
Damn.
I think that's what Apollo is. And so now we're seeing, like, just to give you an idea of the impact of this kind of technology, Apollo is a new kind of technology. It's never existed before. Anybody who's listening to this, you can jump on the same vibe with me on your iPhone. If you want to try it, what we're talking about, you can now get Apollo on your iPhone for free. We spent three years hacking the iPhone haptic engine so that anyone can try this product, because it actually is the first product that is proven to actually put your body in a state that favors healing with vibration. You don't need, we recommend you buy this because this gives you, a full night of extra sleep back every week, without requiring more time in bed. You get a full night of extra sleep back every week. There's like not a drug on the market that works that well for sleep. So if anything, we recommend getting it for that. But you can just feel good now and feel the relief that these vibrations are proven now to deliver through your iPhone by just downloading the Apollo app and just play the hug vibe or good vibes when you open the app. And you can try this for free and notice that your phone can now be a device that reduces your stress and improves your health when used intentionally, right? And that's like the whole mission of our technology, is to create technology that heals humanity. And so this is the way that we are doing our part to do that.
Wow. Well, that's super cool. And like, just, reduce stress, sold. Like that's another thing where if people go and try it, I'd love to hear in the comments like what your experience is with it. I'd be fascinated to do that. And I will definitely be trying it myself via the phone. Well, that's fascinating. Again, I feel like we could talk all hour about that, but I do want to kind of get back to the book a little bit. And given the themes of this podcast, love, loss, and hallucinations. First, the word hallucinations, I do want to just throw out there, I use that in this trifecta of themes because, it's kind of catchy, but I don't know if it's necessarily accurate. And I'm wondering, given all your experience and all your studying, if there is a better word or term than hallucinations that you would use.
But Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, there's a lot of terms that we probably should be using instead of hallucinations, because when we use the
Yeah.
term hallucinations in the past, not that it's not a good title for your show, it's a great title. But when we use it to describe experiences in the past, it has a connotation of that experience is not real and that
Right.
we are like fabricating it.
Hmm.
And when we think about that term hallucination in the context of what psychedelic experiences actually are, which psychedelic as a term was coined by Aldous Huxley and Humphrey Osmond in the 1950s.
Hmm.
I talk about this in the book as well. And the idea that what psyche means is mind and delos means is to show or to reveal. And so what these medicines are doing when we use them in the indigenous tribal setting and shamans are using them, or we use them in the clinic to heal trauma, is they're not inducing hallucinations of any kind. There's no fabrication. We are
Right.
using them to quiet somebody's mind enough to reveal an underlying reality of that lives and is memory stored in the subconscious and what Freud called unconscious material. That is effectively everything that exists that is not available to our day-to-day awareness. Which is most of it. That's most of our
Most of it, exactly. Massive amounts.
Right. It's like our awareness, what we're aware of in our consciousness is like just the tip of the iceberg that the Titanic captain hit.
Yeah, literally.
And the rest of our consciousness, that's all the good stuff, is everything else that's underneath. The other 95% of that iceberg that lives beneath the surface of the water that we miss and therefore end up sinking our ship. Right. So the idea is that psychedelics help us to be able to tap into that material and bring it up to the surface and explore this underlying reality that is there, that has always been there, that is by no means fabricated. What we fabricate and what we mess up is when we screw up the interpretation of what we're experiencing because we are taking it personally or not coming at it from a framework where we really understand like how to interpret it, which is why in ancient traditions we have help. We have elders who help us interpret visions and experiences like this and dreams. But we've lost a lot of that in our modern society. But I think to that point, it changes a lot about the way you think about the world when we think about most of what we experience is part of, especially with psychedelic medicines, it's part of a more enriched underlying reality that is equally valid as what's real, considered real and conscious, than what we experience when we're in our normal, sober, daily default state.
Right. Absolutely. And I, as far as the elder, I think that speaks to the importance today of having trained facilitators and guides to help, you interpret, because there's a lot of metaphor and symbolism that can come through on plant medicine journeys that, it does help to have someone who's one step away to help guide you through that and really get to the deeper meaning of what you might be experiencing versus what your immediate reaction to it is like, oh, it means this, but go a little deeper. It actually means something else. Yeah.
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 Exactly.
Cool. So I don't know. Is there another term that kind of hits on the same way? Visions?
Yeah.
Altered reality. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. So it depends on the discipline that you're coming at it from, right? Like whose lens are you looking at this from? And when we think about it from the indigenous tribal lens, we talk about the experiences like visions and dreams, right?
Right.
And that's how many indigenous tribal cultures talk about, and they have their own words for it, but they describe it as like visions and dreams. They don't rule any of it out. They don't rule any of it out as wrong by default, or judge it, or say that it's bad, or you're not supposed to experience it, or it's not real, right? They don't give it those kinds of labels because it takes away from the ability to interpret that information for the value it's trying to provide. We are very quick to judge, right? Again, this is part of this Cartesian thinking. If I think, therefore I am, then I think first and I feel later. Right.
Right. Which we've been stuck in for over 400 years.
And that squashes our ability to sit with the information rich feelings that are coming up, trying to send us a message saying, hey, this is your next move. This is the information, the nuance, the feelings guiding in this moment what you should probably be thinking about or considering or doing in the next subsequent moment, right?
Right.
And if we're missing that feeling because we're spending all of our time judging it because we're in a think, therefore I am state, then we're forgetting that you're giving up a lot of control that we have over the experience. We're like missing most of it and causing a lot of this, what we call like repressed feeling, which causes suffering. So the words in Western knowledge, in Western medicine that now we've come to describe these states with is kind of like, generally speaking, what we call non-ordinary states of consciousness, which is a very general term, but it applies to any state that is not our normal you and I interacting on a day, like our day-to-day normal conversational default functionality could be considered like a non-ordinary state of consciousness, which could include a dream state, or that's a normal sleepy dream state, or it could include a medication-induced, drug-induced psychedelic experience in a clinic or what have you. But does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And it also does not roll off the tongue quite as well. Love loss and non-ordinary states of...
No, hallucinations is great as a title. That's where it's supposed to be. That's how it should be used, right? But it's not used accurately when it's used to describe non-ordinary states of consciousness because it's stigmatizing to them, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well,
like we don't want our descriptive words to be judgmental words. Ideally, we want them to be like unbiased words.
Yeah, and I do in my approach to that word. I also include things that are not real. Like, oh, you thought it was going to be like reality. You thought going to the store today was going to be this way, but no, it was actually turned out to be that way, which is sort of a hallucination in its own right. I want to, as we have about 15 minutes left or so, and I wanted to loop around to a couple chapters in your book, though, again, given my themes, and particularly, love. We can start with love, and this might just take the rest of the time we have, but the chapter that you have on love is All You Need Is Love, of course, very appropriately. And in it, you write, we are love scientifically, emotionally, and spiritually. Can you dive into a little bit of what you mean by that? Because I think a lot of people would not, they see the emotional part and possibly the spiritual part on some part, but maybe not the scientific part.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that you experience this is through a lot of lived experience. And I think we forget about that's all science starts with an observation, right? It doesn't start with a double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled trial. It starts with Isaac Newton noticing that the apple falls from the tree at a certain rate every single time, right? It starts by noticing that when you pluck two strings that are strung at a certain tension next to each other, that they form a sense of soothing harmony together that feels and sounds good, right? It starts like with those kinds of observations. Then you observe again and again and again, and you recreate the observation, and then eventually it becomes big enough that you can actually study it. And science is patience in action. So like when you think about science is about ideally observing the world in an unadulterated way that allows us to just, observe what's happening without doing anything. As soon as you add something in, as soon as you add something to the sauce and you haven't tasted it yet, the sauce is now changed forever. Like you may have had the best sauce already and now you already over seasoned it, right? You can't go back.
Right.
So I think like when we stop and do these and stop to appreciate the nature of observing the world as a human being, which is what we are here to do. We are human beings. That is the name of our organism type, right? We are human beings. We are not human doings, and yet we spend 90% plus of our time doing stuff, and very, very little of our time just
We're so
being
good at
here.
the doing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we miss a lot of the love signs, the signs that love is not only constantly an energy that is around us, but that it is us, it is part of us, because we're spending so much time doing stuff and being productive that we are missing the balance of yin, which is, again, doing and productivity is yang. It's our masculine energy that our capitalist society favors very much. But it's really important, in fact, essential to regardless of how you look at it, to balance that yang productivity with yin receiving, or we burn out. Part of that receiving is receiving love, not just from the world around us and people and things around us, or by walking into nature, once in a while with bare feet and enjoying what it feels like to have the sun on your face and not do anything, right? And know the world is still going to continue on, even though you're not doing anything. When you stop to feel that feeling, that is love, and it's instantly recognizable, right? Because you're creating the space to receive it. You're balancing the yin. That's how we prevent burnout. The reason why everybody's burning out is because our society is constantly rewarding with cash money and status. We're constantly rewarding productivity and people burning the candle at both ends and giving them trophies and dollars, which doesn't actually result in people feeling more fulfilled or enlightened. It just results in you wanting more of that. And so you keep pushing productivity until there's no more fuel in the tank and people burn out. Of course, naturally, that's what happens when you run out of gas for too long, right? Like that's what happens when a candle burns at both ends for too long. So the solution is just stop for a moment and just breathe, take a single breath by choice. Just feel the sun on hitting your skin when you go outside. Notice the birds chirping and the sounds of the wind blowing through the trees and the blue of the sky and like all of those great things and how fucking amazing it feels to be alive in this moment with all of that just happening around you, and you don't have to do a damn thing for it to happen. Right.
And it'll help refill that tank in seconds. Yeah. And that is the love. Yeah. I love that. Yeah.
Right. And then and then when you're really feeling it, when you're really feeling like you want to notice it, like, again, like hug your dog, right? Like hug a friend or a family member and allow yourself to exchange that mutual joy of feeling and remembering that we are all human and connected to each other. Right. And that is just one of another many examples of opportunities where you are creating, through the scientific experience of repeated observation, the ability to continuously replicate feelings of love and connection and affection with yourself and the world. Right. And do we necessarily have all the scientific tools to study it 20, 30 years ago? No. But now we can measure the changes in the body that happen when people are having these experiences, right? Like we can measure the changes when you're in the sun and you're enjoying yourself, and when you're having an orgasmic climax, or when you're getting a hug from a loved one, or having your hand held by somebody you really like, or whatever, right? Any of those things, experiences we categorize as love, we can now measure, and we can see the change in the body, and that change is dramatic. It's not subtle. It's dramatic. And it puts the body into a state that automatically prioritizes and favors healing. So what better evidence could there be that love is real than that? If the more we get of it, the better we feel. And the more we get of it, the more we heal. It seems like it would make sense that there's a system here that we should probably be paying attention to.
Yeah, she would lean into a period, an exclamation point right there.
Right.
And that also, that also brought to mind throughout your book, you have these mind blowers, or at least the first half, I think it's in the first half.
Yeah. Book one.
And a good one that I happen to pull out that it speaks to exactly what you're saying is 20 seconds of safe touch can synchronize heart rhythms and reduce cortisol, which is like your stress response. And our bodies evolved to regulate together. So yeah, just touching a leg of someone, a hug. I mean, a 20-second hug feels awkward at first, but if you make it that long, it's pretty magical.
Right. I mean, part of it, it's also a lot of like, how do we think about the importance of these things in our lives? Like right now, we Like if we teach, for instance, and we can start right now in this moment, right, with our audience, if we teach properly that being divided as human beings, as pack animals that we are, being divided is evolutionarily favors death and destruction of our species, right? And that and that everything good we have in the world, whether consider it like being smartphones or cars or planes or delicious foods or bridges or whatever, bicycles, etc., your favorite fidget spinner, all of the greatest things that we have in the world are because of our collective action working together to overcome tremendous challenge.
Right.
It's because of working together that we are now living in the age of abundance of the most convenience generation in the history of humankind, right? Like we don't have to lose that. We can actually take a moment here to celebrate that we have created the most without producing more. We can celebrate, and probably I think the signs are saying we should stop and celebrate that we are living in the most convenient, comfortable time in the history of humankind. Easily. And enjoy that for what it is for a little bit, like a pax humana, right? Like that is what the world is kind of like calling for right now, is like, hey, so let's slow down for a minute. Look what you guys have achieved. Like, let's stop and just like savor what we've achieved before we go so quickly to create technology that could instantly in a moment just like take that away and destroy it. Right. Like when you hit something that's so good, again, do we really need to add extra seasoning to the sauce right now? Or can we just like enjoy the sauce for a while for what it is and then maybe reevaluate in a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big question for us as a society.
It's a big question. And I think the key to making that happen, of course, is for people hearing this and people hearing you on other podcasts, is to continue to spread that message to other people. Like, let's just all take a breath and like, wow, this is incredible. And as you know, be grateful for it for that 60 seconds in the morning and 60 seconds in the evening, and allow it to just be for a minute. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, just for a minute, right? Let's just allow everything to like slow down and like and appreciate that like we spend so much time trying to like find time travel outside of us in the world and think about like the fantasy of time travel. You can time travel right now by changing your breath by choice right now. Right? Like just by time travel, I argue in the book is that physics describes time travel, and Einstein's time travel is actually something that we can shift by shifting perspective of time. And that's really, really powerful. And it's through breath and our attention and our relationship between our breath and our attention that we are able to do that. And that's just a skill that all humans were born with the ability to do. And the human body is just like filled with tremendously fun things to discover that we have not even, we've been spending so much time ignoring it. We've missed all the good stuff. Yeah. Right. We're just dragging it around like a poorly packed suitcase. Yeah. There's so much good stuff in here.
Underwear's hanging out, socks leaving a trail down the street. But yeah, I mean, I think, you know, just quickly on that point is just like, I think everyone has experienced this, but maybe not really taken it in fully, is when you stop and take a deep intentional breath, like time just kind of slows down and brings you present and brings you into this difference experience of time and what it is and where you are in it. Before we go, I did want to at least touch on, again, given my themes, one of the chapters you have in the solution part is science meets spirit in a molecule, which you are talking about DMT. And I think that also speaks to, you know, realizing something is bigger, perhaps, you know, whether it's building an iPhone or bigger in the sense of a spiritual sense and that sort of thing. So how is science meeting spirituality in this molecule of DMT?
Yeah, it's a great question. So for me, and I will not spoil the climax of the book for everybody, but for me, you know, I grew up. I grew up.
I'm just trying to tell everyone, don't buy it. Just listen to this, right, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, right. No.
Buy the book, so we won't ruin that here.
Yeah, I won't give you all the exciting details. But just to explain, you know, we learn about a lot of molecules in medical training. Like pretty much every molecule that has ever been discovered to have some kind of impact on the body, either therapeutically or not therapeutically, anything that's like ever been used in medicine in the history of medicine, we learn about, including the current stuff, including like supplements and many of these things. And yet, one of the molecules that we never talk about in all of those years, decade plus of medical training, is DMT, dimethyltryptamine, which is a naturally occurring psychedelic molecule that is active and lives in all of our brains. And in the brains of nearly every animal and of nearly every plant has some amount of DMT in it. And we don't get high from eating regular plants with DMT because our bodies break it down and degrade it almost immediately. But when our brains pump out a huge amount of it, which is thought to happen during deep dream states, or when you're born, or when you die, or at certain other key periods of life, maybe like ecstatic states with meditation and things like that, that people experience these very common and repeatable spiritual phenomena, including what is consistent with and people describe as end of life experiences of like walking into a bright white light and meeting God. And and in science, and this is again part of why I wrote this book, is because I feel like science has even forgotten the scientific method in a lot of ways, because the scientific method that I talk about in the book is very, very clear about how we do science, and how we do science in an unbiased way, patiently observing, and then we observe. Patience I also love. I always had a hard time with it because it was never taught properly. And then as soon as I realized that like patience is arguably the lowest effort skill to master, because you can get better at it by just doing literally nothing, I was like, oh my God, like what have I been doing my entire life thinking I'm supposed to be doing something, since I'm supposed to be doing nothing.
Right.
Right. But like, it's not doing nothing. It's like allowing things to just exist without the compulsion, the being impulsive and that kind of thing, which is like really like an amazing concept. So, but this idea that we can patiently watch what happens when some people have these self-reported experiences in the wild, then Rick Strassman and a number of other people, another psychiatrist, a few decades ago, take some of these people and many others and bring them into his lab at the University of New Mexico, and they administer DMT IV and record all of these experiences, and they're replicating by way of the scientific method the same kind of spiritual, deeply profound spiritual meeting God, near-death like experiences that people describe when they're not under the influence of IV DMT. And you have to wonder, right? Like it made Joe Rogan wonder when he wrote the Spirit Molecule book or did the movie with Rick Strassman,
right?
And then texted Donald Trump, which moved forward this executive order around psychedelics. You have to wonder if this molecule naturally exists for all of us in our minds, and when you administer it from the outside, it induces spiritual near-death like experiences. Technically, by way of the scientific method, that is a repeatable demonstration that spirituality is in fact real and can be mediated molecularly at the site of where DMT acts, which is the 5-HT2A serotonin receptor. There's a biologically known pathway of accessing spirituality repeatedly, which to me is all the evidence I need to know that spirituality is real and backed by science. And whatever you want to call it, God or source of the universe or whatever, it is real. You know what I mean? The labels that we have for it are inadequate, inferior to what it is, because it is spirit, but it is real. And we can prove it now because we have demonstrated it with molecules that reliably reproduce it, and we make those molecules in our bodies. So to me, as soon as I met DMT by way of learning about its existence and studied it, I was like, holy shit. How are we so far behind on the teaching about this? You're like, why didn't we learn about this in school? Like, you guys are crazy and negligent both for not teaching us this stuff.
Right.
or just like willfully, willfully ignorant, you know, like, come on.
Well, yeah, probably
like,
a little of
this is the coolest shit
above,
ever.
Right? Yeah.
this is the coolest shit ever. I mean, to say it like a school kid discovering this stuff when I discovered, like what psychedelics could do for people with mental illness. Like, this is the coolest shit ever. Like, we can heal people from severe mental illness through meeting God in a controlled setting, right? Like that. It's
gives me
like
chills.
it's everything that it gives you chills because it's so real, and because it's everything that science has been teaching us in the dogmatic way to not trust. And now meeting full circle, being like, oh, wait, we have an explanation. So that's why I put it in this book. That's what that chapter is about. It's about how I learned to explain how spirit is real through molecular action and meaning making in the brain through studying psychedelics like DMT.
Yep. And I will say, just on my own personal experience, psychedelics and ayahuasca, which involves DMT, has definitely taken me from atheist back into a larger spiritual belief without question, without doubt, with like, yes, we're all connected on something larger and more powerful than we will probably ever understand, but we are understanding more.
And I think that's where faith becomes really important and misunderstood, because faith is almost like we're allowed to have experience and evidence that's supportive of faith. Faith need not be blind entirely. At the same time, faith can be evidence-based and also exist in a state in which we don't have a full understanding or can't necessarily fully understand how things work, and it's still okay. Right. And I think that's the hard part for a lot of us. Is like, I need to understand it all. Well, it's like, guess what? I'm sorry to disappoint you, but like, I've been to 12 years post-college of medical and science training, and I don't understand it all. We're never going to understand it all because we were not meant to understand it all. And that's okay. We can still know without knowing. We can still know. Right. And that knowing is more of like this, like what you were kind of describing is when you have this experience with ayahuasca and you meet like Mother Ayahuasca, like in the jungle with the medicine and the shamans guiding you, et cetera. It's like, it's an experience that is beyond words of connecting with something that reminds you of so much more about existence, life, humanity, that like we can't necessarily understand it all or grasp it all or learn how to describe it all, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And there is a little bit of faith that we have to practice through, which is a skill also I describe in the book. And I think faith is like the bridge from knowing without fully understanding everything to knowing and really embodying that knowing without doubt. Because once you know, there's no room for doubt. Belief leaves room for doubt, and doubt can be intercepted, right?
Yeah. And there's some level of beauty in that mystery and doubt. Like I don't think we should know everything, right? Like, let's leave a little mystery there just for our imaginations. And
exactly. Yeah, like everything. If we understood everything, it would be so boring. The world would be so boring.
Exactly.
It's meant to be constantly discovered. It's meant to be constantly discovered. That's why we're here.
That is what you are doing for the last 20 plus years, which again, great book. Definitely check it out. I'll leave links to Dr. Dave and the book and everything in the show notes. But last question here, just a quick one. What are you loving right now and why?
That's a great question. It's hard to think of one thing. I mean, the thing that stands out the most to me with all of the stress that I have in my life, running a startup and running a medical clinic. I see patients in 2 states, and just my wife and I just bought a house, and we are, and we're raising a 17-month-old, and lots of other, challenges that we have constantly. But I think the thing that I'm truly loving right now is, despite all of it, is raising my son, who is just such a blessing every day. Just watching his like sheer childhood joy and his just experience of the world is new and exciting, and like, and just it's just like he is discovering it all for the first time, and it's so amazing to watch. And a big part of writing this book for me was also realizing that one of the most simple things in A Simple Guide to Being Alive is that science supports coming back to our inner child, and that our inner child is actually super real. It might be, in fact, more real than the adult version of ourselves that we've created to do what we think adults are supposed to do. Our inner child is actually the one that probably needs to be satisfied and safe enough to come out and play more often, which is the fact that it's not is actually in large part probably why a lot of us are struggling right now. And I think science really supports that by showing now that there's profound evidence for the healing power of play and especially play together as humans, of which music, well, right? Music is one of the best ways that facilitates experiences of play in humans together that is healing. And we saw it with the Knicks winning, right? Like entirety of New York was in this like collective euphoria of play.
Euphoric playing, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
People are just really, really needing it because we don't get enough of it, and it's bubbling out. Like our inner children are like knocking the door, being like, "Hey, can I come out yet? Can I come out yet?" Like I feel like I've been in timeout for like decades. Like let me out of here, right? And so watching Sam for me, like every day, no matter how hard the day is, like I can just like watch him like figure out like how to kick a ball in a different way for the first time, or that like popsicles come in 2 different flavors, or like whatever it is, he is taking joy in like these very simple, incredibly mundane, but awesome things about life that I've totally forgotten to appreciate. And he just brings me right back. So
I love that. I love that. And if you've listened to this podcast, I'm a fan of finding and hanging out with your inner child. So I love that part of the book, and learning more play. Definitely. Absolutely. With all that said, thank you so much for your time for this hour. I just want to reflect. It's been awesome to like witness your excitement and like glow talking about all of this through this last hour. So thank you for sharing all that. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. And I look forward to hopefully maybe in the future, we just talk about dreams for a whole hour or something like that.
Would love that. That's one of my favorite topics.
Awesome. All right.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks again, Dave.